My name is Jake, and today I'm answering another request from Matthew L., and we are talking about one of the most beloved films of all time, Frank Darabont's The Shawshank Redemption. This film was released on September 23rd, 1994, and it is based, of course, on the short story by Stephen King called Rita Hayworth and The Shawshank Redemption, which is also very much worth checking out. You can read completely in one sitting. It's like 100 or so pages. Definitely worth checking out if you are a fan of this film, and if you're especially a fan of Stephen King, which I most certainly am. And the film is, of course, directed by Frank Darabont, who directed a few other Stephen King adaptations, The Green Mile, of course, being a favorite, The Mist, this isn't Stephen King, but he developed The Walking Dead. Those first few seasons were just fantastic. So yeah, if I want a Stephen King adaptation, I know if it's in this guy's hands, it's going to be great. I still love you, Stanley Kubrick. The film is about a man named Andy Dufresne, played by Tim Robbins, who just knocks it out of the park here, and he is falsely convicted for murdering his wife and her lover. And in Shawshank Prison, he meets another prisoner, also in there for murder, by the name of Red, played by Morgan Freeman, who gives a career best performance here, in my opinion. And that's saying a lot considering how prolific of a career he's had before and after this film, And the film is essentially, sort of chronicles their friendship and just sort of the minor but very impactful tasks that Andy Dufresne does, along the way, writing letters, helping the warden out in a not so good way, helping the prison guard out with his taxes. It's all sorts of stuff, but it all plays out just wonderfully. And like I said earlier, this is one of the most beloved films of all time. It is the #1 rated movie on IMDb's top 250. It's been like that for a while, and it is up there. It's #1 kind of by a country mile, and I could totally understand why. I was thinking of why exactly this movie is so revered and so great. What do we go to the movies for besides to be entertained? We go essentially to feel something, I think. At least that's why we watch the great movies, If it's a movie as long as this, 2 hours, 22 minutes, we are gonna, by the end of that movie, we want to say, okay, I'm glad I spent that much time. Because time is precious, You could be doing anything else with however long it takes to watch a movie, anything else. You want to be glad that you spent however long you spent on that movie. And this is by and far the definition of that. I'm not going to go into spoilers until a little later, but it arguably has the biggest setup and payoff I have ever seen in a film, ever. It is so masterfully constructed. I don't know how they did it. And it's great because for most of the movie, you're not always sure if it's going to pay off. Right from the start, the foremost feeling that you feel really is anger. From the opening court scene to the constant abuse of the inmates, particularly Andy Dufresne. I forgot really watching this again how raw this movie is. They really do not cut away from how that sort of life can be sometimes. And of course, the abuse at hand is primarily dealt by the captain of the guards, Byron T. Hadley, played by Clancy Brown, and one of the coldest, most soulless characters ever put to film, Warden Samuel Norton, played by Bob Gunton, who, in my opinion, gives probably the most underrated performance, I think. he brings such a sort of, detached, almost emotionless presence to the role. And it's so subdued. It works perfectly. With all like the really sick characters in movies that you love to hate, they're usually getting some pleasure out of what they're doing to our protagonist. Most of the time, it doesn't even seem like he's getting any pleasure. He's just this sick, twisted, vile human, and he is one of the most hateable characters in a movie. Period. I don't think if you've seen this movie, you would not argue with that statement. Now, the heart of this film, and my favorite thing about it, is, of course, the dynamic between Andy and Red. They are probably the best, if not one of the best, friendships ever on screen, period. Andy is someone you root for from the get-go. He genuinely cares about not only Red, but all his fellow inmates, enough at least to, get them some beer. And he's insanely well read. He can talk his way through out of just about anything. Very, very smart and very, just loyal. He genuinely seems like a great guy, despite this harsh conviction. And Red, in addition to his resourcefulness, because he is like the prison smuggler, he can get you just about anything you need. In addition, to that sort of, trustworthiness and resourcefulness, he's very reliable. We all need a friend like Red, He doesn't tell you what you want to hear most of the time. He is brutally honest, but he is there through thick and thin for Andy. He is just, you are rooting, like I said earlier, you are rooting for both of them the entire movie. They are so, even throughout their, flaws, and I mean, because these aren't like very, I guess, I don't know what the term is, but they're not clean personalities. They definitely have their, rough edges here and there, but they are still so easy to like, both of them. And it makes the film that much better, so much more watchable, in my opinion. Now, this is the part of the video where I'm going to go into specific scenes that I really adore, or had an impact on me. Spoilers included, so just a heads up. So I couldn't make this video without talking about probably the most heartbreaking sequence in the movie, which is, of course, Brooks's death. Brooks, played by James Whitmore, who delivers another subtly, I don't know if that's a word, heartbreaking performance throughout this entire film. You care so much for him, and the way he just struggles to adjust to post-prison life and just is completely unable to take it any longer, to eventually him hanging himself. It is absolutely gut-wrenching. It is one of the most devastatingly real sequences or scenes, whatever, I have seen in a movie. It is perfectly executed. Fortunately, however, it is closely followed by one of, if not my favorite scene in the whole film. I love this score from Thomas Newman. He is definitely one of the best film composers of all time. However, my favorite music-related scene in the film is pretty much everyone else's. It is the scene where Andy locks himself in the warden's office and plays the opera song over the loudspeaker. It is one of the most cathartic moments ever in a movie. Because for that brief moment, Andy's in control. He is just on top for that one little moment. It is so satisfying, And I love Red's narration. He's like, I have no idea what those opera women were singing about. Sorry. And it's also followed by one of my other personal favorite scenes in the film. Andy's quote about music and Mozart after doing 2 weeks in the hole, he's like, I had it in here and in here. I'll put a link to that whole scene because it's followed by, Morgan Freeman's Hope monologue, which is awesome. I'll put a link in the description to that because it is one of my absolute favorite movie scenes. Because that quote, Andy's quote about music, is one of the most relatable things I've ever heard. And of course, the sequence where Andy finally escapes after 19 years is... I have no words. Other than, it does contain some great shots from Roger Deakins, the best cinematographer in the world. If Roger Deakins is shooting a movie, you can bet, even if the movie itself is not great, it is a marvel to look at. And another scene that I might put a link to is Morgan Freeman's rehabilitation monologue towards the end of the film. One of the most moving scenes, Morgan Freeman's acting at its finest. And I was saying earlier that this movie has the best setup and payoff. This might be my favorite movie ending ever. Top 5, but most likely number 1. It almost makes me cry. When Red and Andy are finally reunited on the beach, and they just... it's zooming out, but you can see him just hug it out. It is the most... I'm getting choked up talking about it. It is why we watch movies. Again, I'm going back to that, but really, it is worth watching the entire 2-hour movie just for the sensation and the relief and the closure and the just overall satisfaction you get from just that brief final scene. That is the magic of movies. Overall, if on the off chance that you haven't seen this movie, please, what are you doing? I'm sorry, but please see this movie. Please just watch it once. It is essential to anyone who has ever enjoyed a movie. It is so... there's nothing that I can say that hasn't been said already or just analyzed to death about this movie, but just really, it is nothing short of a masterpiece. It is perfect in every conceivable way. I can't hype this movie up enough. I haven't met or talked to or read anything negative about this film. Everyone who has seen it has mostly loved it, if not liked it. It is the greatest... I was going to say greatest film ever. There's some I like better, but this is absolutely top tier. Thank you guys so much for watching this. If you have any requests that you want to see or me to review, music or film related, drop it right down there below in the comments. My name is Jake. I'll be back.